Welcome back to ZYLUX. Today, we are going to talk about building a strong financial foundation in Sweden, covering everything from basic budgeting principles to investing through your ISK account and preparing properly for retirement. Whether you are just starting your financial journey or looking to optimize what you already have in place, this video is something practical and directly applicable for you. Let me start with a fundamental truth about personal finance in Sweden that most people do not fully appreciate. Sweden is genuinely one of the best countries in the world for building long-term wealth if you use the systems and structures available to you correctly. The tax-advantaged investment accounts, the pension system, the relatively high average wages, and the strong social safety net collectively create an excellent environment for wealth building over time. But most people do not take full advantage of what is available to them, and they end up leaving significant money on the table as a result. The first thing you need to understand thoroughly is the ISK account, the investeringssparkonto. This is a Swedish account type specifically designed for long-term investing, with a particularly favorable tax treatment compared to other alternatives. Instead of paying 30% capital gains tax on your profits when you sell investments, you pay a small annual schablonbeskattning, which is a standardized tax calculated based on the total value of your account at the beginning of the year multiplied by a rate linked to government bond interest rates. This is a Swedish account type specifically designed for long-term investing with a particularly favorable tax treatment compared to other alternatives. In most recent years, this annual tax has been well below what you would pay in capital gains tax on equivalent returns. This means you can buy and sell investments within your ISK without triggering any capital gains tax event. You can rebalance your portfolio, take profits, and reinvest freely without tax consequences within the account. The only tax you pay is the small annual standardized tax on the total account value. Why does this matter so much? Because the combination of tax efficiency and long-term equity investment is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available to Swedish residents. If you are not already using an ISK account for your investments, opening one should be your absolute immediate priority. The next fundamental to understand is the Swedish pension system, which is more complex than most people realize. Sweden has a multi-pillar pension system that requires active understanding to navigate well. The public pension consists of two parts, the income pension and the premium pension. Your premium pension, representing approximately 2.5% of your salary, goes into investment funds that you personally choose from an approved list. Many Swedes simply leave this in the default Applicabl fund, which is actually quite good and globally diversified. But it is worth knowing that you have the option to choose your own allocation among hundreds of approved funds with different risk profiles and fee structures. Your premium pension, representing approximately 2.5% of your salary, goes into investment funds that you personally choose from an approved list. Beyond the public pension, many employees have collective pension agreements through their employers, typically representing several additional percent of your salary that is saved for retirement. These collective pension agreements vary significantly by sector dollar. The ITP agreement covers private sector white-collar workers. ZYLUX covers private sector blue-collar workers. Applicabl covers municipal and county employees. Understanding exactly what your collective pension agreement covers, when it vests, and what choices you have within it is essential for effective retirement planning. Now let us talk about practical investing through your ISK, because this is where most of the wealth building opportunity lies for Swedish investors. The evidence overwhelmingly and consistently favors low-cost index investing over active fund selection for the vast majority of individual investors. The data from decades of performance tracking consistently shows that the majority of actively managed funds underperform their benchmark index over the long term, especially after all fees are properly deducted. Swedish actively managed equity funds typically charge between 1 and 1.5% per year in management fees. Index funds from providers like Avanza, Nordnet, or international providers available through your ESK can cost as little as 0 to 0.2% per year. That difference in annual fees compounds dramatically and significantly over decades. On a 400,000 krona portfolio over 20 years, a 1% annual fee difference amounts to hundreds of thousands of kronor in lost returns. For a Swedish investor starting out, a simple 3-fund portfolio approach works very well in practice. A global index fund covering developed markets for broad international diversification. A Swedish equity fund for home market exposure and currency alignment. And potentially an emerging markets fund for additional growth exposure. The specific allocation between these 3 funds depends on your personal risk tolerance and investment time horizon, but a starting point of 60 to 70% global developed markets, 20 to 25% Sweden, and 10 to 15% emerging markets is reasonable for a long-term investor with a horizon of 15 years or more. A Swedish equity fund for home market exposure and currency alignment, and potentially an emerging markets fund for additional growth exposure. Let us talk about the 50-30-20 budget rule and how it applies practically in a Swedish context. 50% of your after-tax income goes toward essential needs, including housing, food, transportation, and insurance. 30% goes toward wants, including dining out, entertainment, travel, and hobbies. 20% goes toward saving and investing. In Sweden, where median after-tax income for a full-time worker is around 25,000 kronor per month, depending on profession, this would mean 5,000 kronor per month toward savings and investment. That is a meaningful amount that invested consistently over 20 to 30 years in broadly diversified equity index funds, earning a long-term real return of around 7% annually, can compound to truly substantial wealth. The power of compound returns over time cannot be overstated and is genuinely difficult for most people to intuitively grasp. If you invest 5,000 kronor per month starting at age 30, earning an average annual real return of 7%, by age 65, you would have accumulated approximately 10 million kronor in real terms, adjusted for inflation. The power of compound returns over time cannot be overstated and is genuinely difficult for most people to intuitively grasp. That is the kind of financial security that creates genuine freedom of choice in how you live your later life. And it does not require extraordinary income or exceptional investment skill. It requires consistency, patience, and starting early enough to let compounding work in your favor. Now, let us address the Avanza versus Nordnet question, which is genuinely relevant for most Swedish investors considering where to open their ISK. Both are excellent platforms, and the honest answer for most investors is that either works well. Avanza has a slightly better mobile application experience and is the largest platform in Sweden by number of customers. Nordnet has a slightly stronger offering for international stocks and has a presence across all the Nordic countries, which some investors find reassuring. Both platforms offer zero commission trading on many Swedish and Nordic stocks and ETFs. Both offer ISK accounts and pension savings, accounts with competitive fee structures. The most important thing is to pick one and actually start rather than spending excessive time comparing. Switching platforms later, if your needs change, is entirely straightforward. On the topic of housing in Sweden, it is worth addressing because it is such a central financial concern for most Swedes. Sweden has among the most expensive housing markets relative to median income in Europe, with Stockholm in particular showing property price to income ratios that are very high by both historical and international standards. The question of whether to buy or rent is genuinely complex and depends significantly on your personal circumstances, location, time horizon, and financial situation. Buying gives you stability, potential benefit from continued price appreciation, and the ability to make your home your own. But it also ties up very significant capital, creates substantial debt obligations, and has costs that are routinely underestimated, including bostadsavgift payments, maintenance reserves, insurance, moving costs, and the opportunity cost of capital tied up in the property. Buying gives you stability, potential benefit from continued price appreciation, and the ability to make your home your own. Renting gives you flexibility and keeps capital available for other investments that may offer better returns. Over very long investment horizons, the historical real return on broadly diversified global equity has generally exceeded real estate returns in most markets when all costs including maintenance, property taxes, and transaction costs are properly accounted for. Buying gives you stability, potential benefit from continued price appreciation, and the ability to make your home your own. Renting gives you flexibility and keeps capital available for other investments that may offer better returns. But housing is also a lifestyle and stability decision, not purely a financial optimization problem. My suggestion is to do a thorough, honest comparison specific to your actual situation before deciding, carefully accounting for all costs in both scenarios and stress testing your analysis against different scenarios of price appreciation or depreciation. But housing is also a lifestyle and stability decision, not purely a financial optimization problem. Let us talk about building an emergency fund, which should actually come before aggressive investing in your prioritization. Before you invest significant sums in equities, you should have 3 to 6 months of essential expenses saved in a liquid, accessible account. In Sweden, this means a high-yield savings account, or sparkonto. Many Swedish banks offer competitive interest rates on sparkonton, and it is genuinely worth comparing rates across different providers rather than simply accepting whatever rate your primary bank offers. This emergency fund is your financial shock absorber and provides peace of mind. It prevents you from having to sell long-term investments at a potentially very bad time when unexpected expenses arise, such as job loss, major repairs, or medical costs. Let me also address investing psychology, because this is where many investors make their most costly mistake. The stock market goes up and down. Sometimes it goes down substantially and frightens people. During the global financial crisis in 2008, the Swedish stock market fell by nearly 50%. During the pandemic in early 2020, it fell by approximately 30% before recovering entirely within months. These large drawdowns are entirely normal and temporary for a diversified investor with a long time horizon who has the discipline to stay the course. The investors who maintained or even increased their investment contributions during market downturns consistently benefit most from the subsequent recovery. The investors who sell during periods of fear crystallize their losses permanently and typically miss much of the recovery. Developing the emotional and psychological discipline to stay the course during market volatility is perhaps the single most valuable financial skill you can develop as an investor. One highly effective, practical technique for building this discipline is to automate your investment contributions completely. Set up a monthly automatic transfer from your salary account to your ISK immediately after your salary arrives each month. This way, you invest consistently before you have any opportunity to spend the money on discretionary items, and you do not need to make an active decision every single month about whether to invest or not. This automation also naturally implements the dollar cost averaging strategy we discussed, buying more units when prices are low and fewer when prices are high, which smooths your average purchase price over time. To summarize the key actions for any Swedish investor to take: open an ISK account if you do not already have one. Set up a monthly automatic investment in a diversified low-cost index fund within that account. Build an emergency fund 3 to 6 months of essential expenses before investing aggressively. Understand your pension situation fully, including both public pension and any collective pension agreement from your employer. Review any housing decisions carefully with realistic cost assumptions. And continue expanding your financial knowledge, because better understanding leads to better decisions over time. Financial independence in Sweden is genuinely achievable for most working people who adopt a long-term perspective, start reasonably early, and maintain consistent habits through the inevitable ups and downs. Start today rather than waiting for the perfect moment. Your future self will be genuinely grateful for the decision you make right now. Follow ZYLUX for regular practical content on Swedish personal finance, evidence-based investing strategies, and building long-term wealth in Sweden. Leave a comment below with your most pressing financial question, and we will address it in a future video.